Hey everybody, Ben here with Midwest Climate Engineering Watch. We're going to continue on with the episode 3. Episode 1 was regarding the destruction of the natural world. Episode 2 was discussing the impacts of climate engineering and the programs being used, which if you haven't looked at the last 2 episodes, I suggest you take a look at them. Episode 3 will be the discussion of Yuri Bezmenov's destabilization system, otherwise known as the 4 steps to subvert a country. And we're going to discuss how the media plays a role and how the government influences the media. So starting today, we're going to discuss with Yuri Bezmenov, former KGB spy, defected from Soviet Union and became an American citizen and an instrument of our success. So here are Yuri Bezmenov's 4 steps to subverting a country. Step 1 is demoralization. Yuri Bezmenov states this is a process which can take about 15 to 30 years to perform, a generation. During this stage, the moral fiber and integrity of this country is put into question, thereby creating doubt in the minds of the people. To do so, manipulation of the media and academia is required to influence young people. As the younger generation embraces new values such as Marxism and Leninism, the older generation slowly loses control simply through attrition. Again, true facts no longer matter during this stage, but rather creating perceptions are of paramount importance. So what does that mean? Demoralization pretty much means, right then and there, that you're being victimized, that you're being abused, that the system is stacked against you, and that you have no way, no how of being able to make a change. This idea that you should only focus on yourself and not for the greater good. This idea that you are owed something as opposed to earning something. And this idea that all the problems of your decisions that come from your decisions are not your own fault, that they're somebody else's, that it is the government's fault and it is the overarching system's fault. All these things are implanted and set up into people's minds. Step 2, destabilization. The purpose of this step is to change the status quo, particularly the country's economy, foreign relations, and defense systems. The intent is to create a massive government permeating society and becoming intrusive in the lives of its citizens. This could take from 2 to 5 years to perform. Again, with the active support of academia pushing youth in its direction, here entitlements and benefits are promised to the populace to encourage their support. Basically, they're bribing the people to accept their programs. Now, Bezmenov claims after this stage is completed, the naive college professors are no longer needed, and since they will undoubtedly protest government policies when they discover the truth, they will be disposed of quickly. He cites examples of this occurring in Nicaragua, Grenada, Afghanistan, and Bangladesh. The stabilization, perfectly read there, influencing the youth. And what he does, and I've seen this happen with the Washington University students and other local colleges, the professors would bribe the children with a grade, with an A grade for the semester if they go out and they protest, whether it was a Stockley protest, whether it was the George Floyd protest, Ferguson protest. They pushed them out there to push the agenda, and these students would just go out there and support it. Majority of them did it for a grade, the others bought into the concept. Number 3, crisis. This is a major step lasting up to 6 weeks and involves a revolutionary change of power. This is where the cataclysmic event upsets and divides the country, thereby creating panic among the citizens. Recent examples include the 2011 upheavals in the Middle East, most notably Egypt and Libya. To Americans, symptoms would include circumventing the Constitution, altering the checks and balances of the government, and possibly martial law. Now people are saying that this is the George Floyd protest, that this is Ferguson, that this is Stockley. Crisis, I believe, is coming when the election's hit. It's a 6-week process. During that time, there's 2 scenarios that'll play out. Either Pelosi wins, either Biden and Kamala win and Trump and Pence lose, which causes Trump to question the mail-in ballots, at which point they will attempt to use the military to remove Trump from office, or they will threaten to use the military from Trump in office, causing these Trump supporters to stand up and combat what's going on, whether it's through protests, whether it's through violence, whether it's through whatever. Or, more likely step, is polls are showing that Trump will win. He has an absolute majority, and they're slated to win over 300 points in the Electoral College. And what this outcome says is that Pelosi with Biden and Harris, what they're going to do is, if they lose, they're going to inaugurate themselves anyways, and the major blue states and cities will end up following that path, meaning that, another form of conflict is coming. This is a 6-week process, and I believe this could take about 6 weeks, one scenario or the other. Finally, normalization. The final stages of the populace finally acquiesces and begins to assimilate communism. This can take up to 2 decades to complete. Well, communism is simple. A country doesn't have to know that it's communist in nature, especially when it becomes overly centralized. Now, the goal is a centralized government. Why? Because the environment's imploding and they need to have that control. They absolutely need it. If they don't, how do they control the population? How do they flow everything? So on and so forth. So how did we get here? How did the destabilization process begin? Well, it all starts with the media. It all starts with lies. It all starts with propaganda. And Operation Mockingbird, a CIA program, is the start of it. Here's a summary, then we're going to go into the creation of it. Summary of it is the CIA has a long-played international game of propaganda required by an intelligence agency. But during the Cold War, the agency paid and intimidated journalists into helping promote its messages. Famous Watergate reporter Carl Bernstein broke into the story in 1977 for Rolling Stone. Bernstein revealed the workings of Operation Mockingbird, in which many journalists, included Pulitzer Prize winners, joined the CIA's payroll, writing fake stories to disseminate the agency's agitprop and providing intelligence. Other journalists were threatened and blackmailed and cooperated with Mockingbird and were given falsified or fabricated information about their actions in the order to engender their support for the CIA's mission. The program has never been officially discontinued. That is absolutely important because that is still in play today. That was from the Daily Beast, and we're going to go to SpartacusEducational.com. Here's a bigger, longer rundown of Operation Mockingbird. In 1948, Frank Weissner was appointed director of the Office of Special Projects. Soon after, it was renamed the Office of Policy Coordination, the OPC. This became the espionage and counterintelligence branch of the Central Intelligence Agency. Weissner was told to create an organization that concentrated on propaganda, economic warfare, preventative direction action, including sabotage, anti-sabotage, demolition, and evacuation measures. Subversion against hostile states, including assistance to underground resistance groups and support of indigenous anti-communist elements in threatened countries of the free world. Later that year, Weissner established Mockingbird, a program to influence the domestic American media. Weissner recruited Philip Graham, Washington Post, to run the project within the industry. Graham himself recruited others who had worked for the military intelligence during the war. This included James Truitt, Russell Wiggins, Phil Gagin, John Hayes, and Alan Barth. Others like Stuart Alsop, Joseph Alsop, and James Reston were recruited from within the Georgetown set. According to Deborah Davis, the author of Catherine the Great, by the early 1950s, Weissner owned respected members of the New York Times, Newsweek, CBS, and communications vehicles. In 1951, Alan W. Dulles persuaded Cord Meyer to join the CIA. However, there is evidence that he was recruited several years earlier and had been spying on the liberal organizations he had been a member of in the later 1940s. According to Deborah Davis, Meyer became Mockingbird's principal operative. One of the most important journalists under the control of Operation Mockingbird was Joseph Alsop, whose articles appeared in over 300 different newspapers. Other journalists willing to promote views of the CIA included Stuart Alsop, New York Herald Tribune; Ben Bradley, Newsweek; James Reston, New York Times; C.D. Jackson, Time Magazine; Walter Pincus, Washington Post; Walter Winchell, New York Daily Mirror, is that still around? Drew Pearson, Walter Lippmann, William Allen White, Edgar Ansel Moore, Chicago Daily News; Hal Hendricks, Miami News; Whitelaw Reid, New York Herald Tribune; Jerry O'Leary, Washington Star; William C. Baggs, Miami News; Herb Gold, Miami News; and Charles L. Bartlett, Chattanooga Times. According to Nina Burleigh, I guess that's her last name, the author of A Very Private Woman, 1988, these journalists sometimes wrote articles that were commissioned by Frank Weissman. The CIA also provided them with classified information to help them with their work. After 1953, the network was overseen by Alan W. Dulles, director of the Central Intelligence Agency. By this time, Operation Mockingbird had major influence over 25 newspapers and wire agencies. These organizations are run by people such as William Paley, CBS, Henry Luce, Time Magazine and Life Magazine, Arthur Hayes Schulzberger, New York Times, Helen Rogers Reed, New York Herald Tribune, Dorothy Schiff, New York Post, Alfred Friendly, managing editor of the Washington Post, Barry Bingham, Louisville Courier Journal, and James S. Copley, Copley News Services. This is still going on today. Anderson Cooper was apparently in the CIA for 2 years and just decided he was going to quit and join the CNN newsroom. Now tell me if you buy into that or not. I don't. The guy still works for him. Once you're CIA, you're always CIA. There is no such thing as a former CIA. So what do people do whenever organizations start making movements against the government? Whenever they see the dangers unfolding before them? Especially when it comes to Second Amendment movements, when it comes to anti-vaccine movements or anti-medical mandate movements. Anything that deals with freedom. Anything that deals with struggle. Even the Black Panthers were victim of this. Even the, Malcolm X was victim of this. Martin Luther King was victim of this. What do? Well, there's a program called COINTELPRO, and it's straight out of the FBI website. Here's the little snippet. COINTELPRO, the FBI began COINTELPRO, short for Counterintelligence Program, in 1956 to disrupt the activities of the Communist Party of the United States. In the 1960s, it was expanded and included a number of domestic groups, such as Ku Klux Klan, the Socialist Workers Party, and the Black Panther Party. All COINTELPRO operations ended in 1971, although limited in scope, about 0.2% of the FBI's workload over a 15-year period. COINTELPRO was rightfully criticized by Congress and American people for bridging First Amendment rights and for other reasons. Now here's the deal. They always say something has ended, but realistically it never truly ends. It just transitions into another program that's more vicious, more subversive, more effective.